Well, let's go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Dawn Olsen, and I am the Chief Communications Officer for the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services, and I will also be serving as your moderator today. So please enjoy our first online update of the year and our first ever informational webinar. So this is a new series of webinars, and we did schedule this one to be an hour and a half since this is new and we didn't know if there would be any kinks or technology hiccups. But just so you know, going forward, these will be 1 hour and they will be scheduled from the noon to 1 p.m. slot. Speaking of, our next update will be in May, followed by one in August and then November. And we will have the dates for those up on our website within the next week, so keep an eye out for those. Also, we are recording this presentation and we will be uploading those to our website as well, so you can always revisit them, or if you'd like to send them to someone, you can do that as well. Today, we'll be talking about the Streamline Indy initiative and some of our processes. Once the presentation is over, there will be a Q&A. So if you do have a question, go ahead and drop it into the chat. You'll be able to send me a direct message. I will see it. I will relay it to our presenters. So with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Director Abbey Brands and the Deputy Director of Construction and Business Services, Alena Jones.
Thanks, Don. Abbey Brands, I'm the Director for the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services, and as Don mentioned, joining me today is Alena Jones. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get this presentation up. Can everyone see that? We good? All right. So as Don mentioned, we're starting these webinars on a quarterly cadence. We've been working through the Streamline Indy initiative with some of our peer departments, and some of the consistent feedback we've gotten is, how do we get this information? How do we get better touch points with the department? So we felt like an easy way into that would be these quarterly sessions where we can talk about progress we're making, both in the Streamline Indy initiative, but also just anything else we're working on that we want to get the word out on. We've also been conducting lunch and learns. Alena Jones and I have been going to different engineering firms and builder firms to present a version of this presentation. So I will say, if we've been to your firm and you've had a lunch and learn, you're going to see a lot of the same information. I'm sorry to say. Maybe take the hour back, but we're really excited about the work that we're doing here and getting the word out, and really interested in taking your questions. So I will go ahead and jump into the presentation. Maybe. Okay. So what we're going to be discussing today, we're going to go over Streamline Indy and what it is and the recommendations we're making to improve permitting processes and turnaround times, and not just that, but the entire development cycle. We'll talk about some of our data points because I think, we've had narratives about what permitting looks like in the city of Indianapolis and how long things can take. And so really, we dug into a lot of the numbers to get an objective view of where we actually are in permitting. And so reporting out some of those numbers as well as some of the data we're working on so we can better track ourselves. And then we're going to provide a timeline as far as when all of these changes are taking place and these new initiatives are going online. So to go right into the recommendations, there's a handful of things. This isn't necessarily an exhaustive list, but just the main kind of pieces that are helpful to kind of get the message across. So as far as streamlining review and issuance processes, we are going to be introducing a new process to record documents on folks' behalf. So it's one of the issues we found with drainage permit issuance is that we send that approval letter and then there can be a significant gap between approval letter and permit issuance. And as folks know, like pre-cons happen during that time, getting final sets of plans, and often there are recorded documents as well. The current process is we give you the document, you sign it, then you give it to us, we sign it, then we give it back to you and you record it. That seems like an unnecessary extra step. And so we're working with our legal counsel on how to set up a policy and a process where once you return it to us, we take it, we will charge that same recording fee. So you're paying the same amount, nothing more. But we'll take it from you then and then have a batch process at the recorder's office so that we're taking that extra step out of it, hopefully reducing those delays. We've been working on a new templated review letter. So some of the feedback we've received has been that, when folks are engaging in our third-party review process, they'll receive their initial comments back, and a lot of it might be boilerplate in nature and not necessarily digging into the true details of the project. And then in subsequent reviews, they really start digging into more of that detail. And so we've been talking with our third-party review team as well as our leadership team as far as what does a improved templated letter look like, so we can really capture what's being done in those stages, and we can show this wasn't in the plans in that first review, and now it is in the second review. Obviously, there are going to be things that get missed just because people are human, and they might catch things in subsequent reviews, but really hoping we can have a more transparent view as far as what is being reviewed in each cycle, so applicants feel like they have a bit more transparency in the process. New accelerated review policy. So our old accelerated review policy is a little silly. It only allowed accelerated review for that first review. Obviously, that is not what people anticipate. If you are engaging in an accelerated review policy, you assume that the entire process is going to be accelerated. We also had instances where a lot of people were opting into accelerated review, which meant no one was really getting accelerated review. And so we peeled back the process, looked into it a bit, and decided we needed to roll out a new policy. And so our board approved version 1 of this policy in early December. It went live at the beginning of this month in February. And so now what that looks like is, instead of people being able to opt in, we now have a form that you fill out when you apply for your permit. That's in addition to the permit application. Our management team reviews that form, and we approve or deny your ability to have accelerated review. That is based on staff capacity. I don't want to charge people a fee for a review, for a service that I can't provide. And so we want to make sure we actually have the means to provide that accelerated review. It also looks at what you have completed so far, right? So if you still need approvals from DMD or regional center approvals or things like that, like you may struggle with getting accelerated review because we have to pause the process and wait for you to get those additional approvals. So we also changed the process. So now each subsequent review is also accelerated. So not just the first review, every review in the process is accelerated. And now it's also just a general flat fee. We will be rebidding our plan review contracts here in a few months. And so once we've had those negotiations, we'll be moving to a even more updated version of that policy. We really want to move away from the mindset of individual permits being accelerated and get into the mindset of projects being accelerated, right? Because when you are opting into accelerated review, it's not because you want that one permit, it's because you want your entire project to be accelerated and to get shovels in the ground faster. And so once we have those contracts renegotiated, have different terms with our vendors, we're going to be looking into how do we look at these holistically as a project. I will say, like I mentioned, we kicked off this new policy earlier this month. Alena, I think you have some stats as far as how that's going.
I do. I've been really proud of the work that our team has done on this process and launching it in a relatively short period of time. So since the beginning of the year, we've received 12 requests for accelerated review. The average time to fill out that request form that Abby mentioned has been about 13 minutes. So it's a pretty quick process if you are looking at requesting accelerated review. We respond to those within 1 business day. And of the requests submitted, 75% have been accepted for accelerated review. The 25% that were rejected actually rejected because either they weren't eligible or there were pending approvals that needed to be completed before an accelerated review would be feasible. So our capacity is looking great right now. And we're very pleased with how that process is going. Of the permits that were accepted for accelerated review, the average time to issuance has been 2 business days. So we're very, very pleased with the results that we're seeing. We'd love to hear feedback from folks as more people take advantage of it.
Thanks, Alena. Moving on to the next bucket there, third-party review assessment. So that has been a consistent point of feedback. Folks don't know if they're dealing with our staff, if they're dealing with third party. It feels like sometimes things get tossed over the fence. Sometimes communications or progress is being made outside of the Acela system, which can be understandable sometimes, but then that makes it difficult for us to all track things together. And so we've had a lot of feedback. We are on a natural procurement cadence where we are mandatory to rebid those contracts here in a few months. We'll be doing so. For those of you who have participated in those proposals before or aware of those contracts, you'll know that our bidding process has been combining inspections and plan review. I think that's confusing. So we're going to be separating those apart. So we have different procurement processes for those two different types of contracts. Additionally, we're going to be looking at, how do we structure this, right? Should this continue to be a full, just third-party vendor situation? Should we be moving to a staff aug model? What would that look like from an expense standpoint? Does that actually afford us more benefits? And so we're interested in kind of overhauling the way that we've done this bid before. And we're going to be looking for more feedback from that proposal process, both in fees and how the work is done, and what that engagement looks like. We're also going to be contemplating a new review cadence structure. So right now, obviously, things are kind of on that hourly basis. We know people want things turned around faster, and theoretically, if you're getting paid hourly, maybe you're not moving as fast as you can because you're getting paid more hours. I'm not saying that is the case. Obviously, we have fantastic partnerships with our vendors, but looking at ways other cities may do this and how we can potentially leverage a non-hourly format in a more kind of task-based format. Internal processes, automation, and workflows. So we all hear the gripes about Acela and the way that it works and the way that we interact with it. I can assure you we have some of our own gripes as well. But there are pieces to that system that we aren't leveraging to their full capacity, right? And so one piece of feedback we've received is that I, as an applicant, when my drainage permit is done, I shouldn't have to be reaching back out to the team to say, hey, where's my ILP? My ILP is done. I shouldn't have to reach back out to the team to say, hey, where's my structural? And so, and that isn't the case, right? Like our applicants shouldn't be having to have that correspondence. We should be doing that internally. And I think for the most part, we do that very well internally, but there can be gaps and triggers that aren't in place that could be in place to better notify all teams where permits are in the different stages. So we really want to dig into Acela, look at the way that our notification processes are working to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page there. Also looking at our workflows, there are a lot of different status and task types across our different permits. And that's going to be the case to some degree, depending on the different permit type. But we could really do a better job of streamlining all of those workflows so we kind of have a better language as far as where permits are in each process. And then finally, there's simpler things like driveway, flood, and street construction cases, right? We have those internally. We could easily turn them on to be public facing. I believe, Alena, you said that's currently in testing right now?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea being you don't have to call someone on our team and say, hey, please open this non-residential flood case or this this driveway case. You would just have that opportunity to open it when you apply for those other permits to make it a little bit more seamless for you. Permit extension and expiration policy, we've received a lot of feedback that it just doesn't make sense to have a year-long permit if I have a much larger project, right? So when we think about IU Health, massive tower that was never going to be a one-year project. And so we have actually already codified an extension to the policy. So now our administrator has a little bit more flexibility when we are receiving those permit applications as far as our ability to extend the timeline of a permit. So you're not having to come back to our staff as frequently to get those amendments and extensions. Finally, a satisfaction survey. We can't fix what we don't know, right? And so there, like I said, there can be a lot of subjective narratives around permitting and how things are going, but there are also a lot of objective findings and experiences that could help us improve our processes. So we're going to be launching a satisfaction survey. It's going to be about 5 questions. When you receive your permit, that's going to ask you, what is your permit number? How did you feel about your experience? How did you feel about, your staff interactions? Additional feedback you want to provide. You will be given the opportunity to provide contact information if you'd like to, if you'd like someone to follow up with you. But this really gives us an opportunity to dig into specific issues that folks raise with us to see, is this really a process issue? Is this just, an unfortunate series of events as far as how this person had dealt with the permitting process, or are there things that we could be drilling down and fixing? So that should be coming online soon. I'm really looking forward to it. So next, getting into some of that data. When we talk about drainage specifically, we really dug in to see what were our turnaround times in the last few years. What are our kind of biggest pain points and opportunities. Just to give you kind of a snapshot of where we are right now, our current drainage permits in progress are about 86. 76 of those are waiting on the applicant. That means we've provided feedback and we're waiting on revisions or additional approvals or something from that applicant in order to continue the process. 8 are with reviewers or staff, and 2 are waiting on a variance or some other outside approval, whether that's with DPW or DMD. So just giving kind of a snapshot there of like where we are day and time in the drainage process. Drainage permits average around 3 rounds of plan review. And in 2025, 42% of drainage permits selected accelerated review. And that's the point I was making earlier. If everyone selects accelerated review, nothing's going to be accelerated because it's all in that same queue. When we drill down into the actual turnaround time numbers, so in 2025, we were about 62 working days. Working days means that doesn't include weekends, that doesn't include holidays, things like that. In 2024, that number was, I want to say 113. Is that right, Alena? 112, somewhere around there. So we saw already a 50% reduction in the amount of time it's taking to get a drainage permit. Some of that, I will be transparent, was related to House Enrolled Act 1037 and the new implications placed on drainage permitting and drainage enforcement for local municipalities. But that didn't take place until around June, right? It went into effect in May. We had to do a halt on all drainage permitting for about a month just to work with legal and figure out, okay, what can we and can't we issue and enforce, because we wanted to make sure we're all above board. So really that impact happened for the last half of the year. We know that streamlining a lot of our reporting and putting additional processes in place aided in that reduction in time. But that's still 62 days, working days is still a significant amount of time. So we are working to drill down each of those tasks and make it a little bit faster. So we're targeting about 45 days for 2026 for that same turnaround. I think, and I know Alena thinks, like, we have a fantastic team. They're very capable, and we do believe that we will actually come in under this number. But this is a kind of realistic goal to be able to set for ourselves that is still a reduction in time, obviously working to be as fast as we can be. And additionally, on this slide, you can see there, we've had a lot of feedback about drainage variances. Those are not handled, or stormwater variances, excuse me. Those are not handled by our department. Those are handled by DPW. We do have a process in which we hand those off to DPW and they hand them back to us. And I know that has created some concern over the last few years. We were able to pinpoint that those variances were taking about 24 days. Moving on to the structural side of the house. So in 2024, it took about 42 working days for a non-residential structural permit from application to issuance. In 2025, that went down to 20, which we're very pleased with. Obviously, we want to see them go out the door as fast as possible, and we're going to continue to try to improve on those times. But there's some things that were introduced that proved to be very helpful. Our manager over the kind of non-residential area introduced a policy that if we've interacted in more than 3 rounds in review, we're going to stop, we're going to bring everybody to the table, and we're going to see what is the issue. Why are we still having these back and forths? How do we need to get all on the same page? And we found that to be extremely helpful in getting these permits over the finish line. It's something we're introducing on the drainage side because we've seen it be so powerful. In 2025, 16% of our structurals requested accelerated review. We're working on our data so we can get better findings as far as multifamily and as far as how non-residential actually shakes out. But clearly a difference between drainage and where we saw 42% and structural and where we saw 16%. So we are seeing some of our process and policy changes that we've put even before the Streamline Indy initiative really taking hold and showing improvements. Over to the right side of the screen there, these are just some of the other kind of data points and pieces we're working on. So as I mentioned, there are so many different tasks and statuses within our system when it comes to our permitting. So over 55 combinations of status and tasks when you're looking at drainage permitting, 20 when you're looking at structural. And obviously, as I mentioned, we're having a lot of work occurring outside of the system. So trying to bring more of that inside of the system so we're all on the same page and tracking these permits in the same way. Accelerated review, we want to understand why so many people were trying to go forward with accelerated review. I think it's kind of obvious. They wanted the permit faster. But what is the need versus the want in that? And how do we address that better with our applicants? And then tracking capacity, just so we can evolve and make sure that we're actually meeting people where they are and we aren't offering this service if we can't provide it. Permit intake, so simple things like making sure that we have everything in place before we send it off to our vendor team. Working on just more kind of accountability on all teams to make sure we're all on the same page and we're not creating any unnecessary delays that we shouldn't be creating. And then piloting cross-sectional review, this goes back to that accelerated review piece, right? How do we get away from the silo of drainage permit, ILP, structural, and how do we start looking at projects more holistically and comprehensively so we can get a project out the door faster versus just the individual permits. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a multi-department collaboration. Both DMD and DPW are involved in these efforts. One of the things we rolled out per the Streamline Indy initiative was a pre-submittal meeting that is attended by representatives from BNS, DMD, and DPW. So not only do you have the individuals in the room who are issuing the permits and working with the reviewers, you also have the individuals in the room who have actually set those regulations, be it zoning or stormwater. And so you can ask some of those more detailed questions from the subject matter experts in the room. This QR code will actually take you to the application form to sign up for a pre-submittal meeting. There's set times per month. So I want to say it's on the first Thursday and the third Monday, something along those lines. Is that accurate?
I think it's first Monday and third Thursday.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I mixed it up. But there's a pretty robust application form that's just there to make sure that we're answering all of the questions you need. So, you know, is it in a flood district? Is it going to require significant right-of-way coordination? Do you need any zoning approvals? Is it historic? All of those things. So that way everybody comes to that meeting ready to discuss what this project is and how we all need to tackle it and what those timelines look like. DPW has discussed potentially DRN specific pre-submittal meetings in the future. I think we really wanted to get this meeting type kind of underway so we could see how it worked and see what additional questions are still lingering after we've had these meetings, and then they'll reassess that. From a stormwater perspective, our partners at DPW have been working with a third-party vendor to assess a lot of their stormwater regulations, be that the ordinance in section 561 to the stormwater regulations that are approved by their board. There are required approvals and forms that we collect on DPW's behalf. And then obviously they oversee the variance process. So this third-party vendor is working with them from the ground up on, are there regulations that are being prohibitive towards development? And what is the happy middle ground that we can find that is obviously still maintaining compliance and the hard work that we need to do, but is also making it a little bit more approachable for the development in this city. And then, you know, from the stormwater variance process, how do we have a more clean cut process? So when we hand it over the fence to DPW, folks know exactly who's taking it in, how much time they can expect for that turnaround, if they have questions, who they follow up with, things of that nature. Finally, bonds have been a significant topic. We collect bonds on behalf of our partners. And so we play a role in that. And then we also release the bonds on behalf of our partners. And so it's a multi-department process, and all departments have been meeting together to really wrap their arms around it and figure out when are bonds necessary, how should we be collecting them, how should we be releasing them, who should be in charge of all of those different steps. So finally, showing a schedule here to kind of hold us accountable, because we don't want to just make these recommendations and say, yay, we made recommendations and we wrote them down and we put them in a drawer and isn't that so great? We actually want to implement these. We want to see improvements. We want to continue to improve the services that we provide in Marion County. And I think it's important to note that we are also considering these all to be iterative. So anything that we roll out that we see, you know, actually we made this decision, but this isn't working or this piece isn't working, we're going to go back to the drawing board and we're going to change them. I think getting feedback from the community is very helpful in that regard. So we can actually see what are pain points that we might be missing. So just to go over some of the timelines here, pre-submittal meetings, as I mentioned, those kicked off in January. They're continuing throughout the whole year. The darker shade there is a touch point that we're having internally once a quarter to make sure that we're all on the same page. Do we need to be tweaking the application? Do we need to be adding more time slots? How can we be improving this for applicants and ourselves? Bonds, as I mentioned, that's an ongoing conversation between departments. The third-party assessment and bids, so those contracts expire this summer, so you'll see a bid come out on the street, I think, relatively soon within Q1. And then we'll be moving into the contract negotiations portion after that, so we can go live with contracts this summer. Accelerated review policy, as I mentioned, that was approved in December. It went live in February. Once we have those contracts renegotiated with our vendors and any additional rates or policies we want to include as it pertains to accelerated review, we'll have that new accelerated review policy that is a bit more comprehensive and focused on projects kicking off in the summer alongside those contracts starting. The satisfaction survey I mentioned, we should be rolling that out. I think it says into February. It might actually eke a little bit into early March. We've been fine tuning the language and making sure we can get it coded on all of those emails, but you should be seeing that very soon on permit emails where you receive a permit approval. Permit intake and issuance process changes. So this kind of encompasses a lot of the different things like I was talking about, like the intake process, the recording documents on people's behalf, things like that. We've already kicked off a lot of those changes and should have them wrapped up in Q1, including the review template. I think we made this kind of a multi-stage just because, again, that iterative process, we want to make sure that we're actually getting the transparency that we're looking for. And if we do need to make changes, we're making those changes. Acela workflows, that's targeted for end of Q1. That may come online a little earlier since we're already testing, but wanted to make sure we gave ourselves enough time to be able to buffer. And then Acela workflows cleanup, we do have that targeted throughout the full year just because we do want to look at all permit types, all workflows in all cases, and that is a pretty monumental task on top of just all of the general kind of upkeep and maintenance and one-off development projects. And so that's something we're going to keep an eye on for the full year. Moving into some of our peers items, these are some of the things that they have been talking about as far as their Streamline initiative. I didn't speak on those because they are our peer items, but DMD has been working with OpenGov on a new development platform. It's been very great. I think it's very easy to use, and that is what is piloting the pre-submittal meeting form. They're going to be looking at their MDC rules and procedures, overviewing some of their policies and zoning ordinances, and then doing a cost of service review. And so all of that is kind of triggered to be completed by mid-year. Our partners at DPW, as I mentioned, are working with that third-party vendor to look at a lot of their regulations, the manual, their policies. Some of those things will be done in early Q2, but most of them are kind of pushed to that Q3 timeframe where we'll see more progress coming online after that. All right, that is my long rambling single breath presentation. I talk very fast, I know. We will open it up for questions now. As Dawn mentioned, we did make this an hour and a half just because first meeting, we wanted to make sure if there were any kinks, we got those worked out. If there were a lot of questions, we wanted to make sure we gave time for those. Going forward, this will probably be more of a noon to 1 session where we have a presentation for the first half, questions for the other. I will say I appreciate a cheeky question just as much as the next gal, but we did create a kind of a locked down system here just because we wanted to avoid anything disrespectful or direct for the sake of being direct. If you do have questions that are specific to specific permits or projects you're working on, we won't be answering those for the group, but feel free to still put them in the chat if that's why you joined today, because you had a very specific question. Still put it in the chat, send it to us. Dawn will document it and we'll look into it and we'll get back to you within the next few days. But our intention is to try to answer questions that are going to be helpful for everybody on the call versus just kind of one-off specific issues. All right. So I'm going to take a drink of water and take a breath. Dawn, let us know what questions we have.
So I have a few questions to start off with. So one of them is there a minimum level Whoops, lost my text. Is there a minimum level of completed plans required to request a pre-submission meeting? Do you know, if you only have renderings or concepts, can you request a pre-submittal meeting, or do you need to wait till the full plans are completed?
Are minimum requirements that you can learn more about when you go through the application. The short version is that we need a site plan and we need elevations. They don't have to be 100% ready for construction plans, but the information that you give when you submit for pre-submittal is going to affect the quality of the information that we are able to give you about the permits that you need to consider for your project. So the reason I say that is we always have the disclaimer during the pre-submittal meetings, this is not a substitute for a review. This is not an approval of a permit, but what it is a chance for us to sit down and talk through what are the potential approvals that you might need? What are the conditions that you might need to be aware of on your property or for this project that could impact timelines, and what approvals are reliant on other prior approvals. So we need to know where you're putting something, what you're putting there, and to have visual representations of that. Ideally, I would say 60% plus completion, and the more complete they are, the better our answers can be.
Thanks, Alena. Let's see. What permits can request accelerated review versus what will be available for later on summer?
Yeah, so currently you can request accelerated review for a structural permit, a drainage permit, or a structural and drainage permit for the same project. We're in the process of evaluating what additional permits could be requested for accelerated review based on the initial outcomes of this process. But when we were looking at where we were getting complaints about delays, it was typically in relation to drainage at first, and then additionally people were asking, when can we get shovels in the ground? So we looked at the things that would allow us to make sure we were meeting timelines and getting shovels in the ground, which is why we started with structural and drainage.
A question about Excella. Is there DBNS documentation on the usage of Excella that can be used for showing people that are new users?
So just so I understand, are we talking about like user guides?
Believe so, yes.
I do believe there are user guides built into the tool. Correct, Alena? Yeah. But go ahead. Sorry.
There are user guides. They are for Acela as a whole, so they are helpful in some instances. They may not cover all the specifics of the build out for each individual system as used by a given municipality.
So that brings up a good point. As we talk about Acela, we have been doing some system discovery to see what other solutions are available. DBNS obviously is not just permitting. We also oversee code enforcement, special events, licensing. And so what people don't maybe realize is that that system does a lot for this one department. And so trying to find substitutes and replacements for that kind of requires a unicorn in the same way. We've actually had some really promising leads on solutions that could take the place of Acela. And so we're tracking those down and seeing if they make sense. But we have also done some outside development as well. So the dot map solution, I don't know, you may have seen, we rolled out a road closure viewer last year through the dot maps platform. We also developed our special event application through that tool as well. We're in the process of developing a right-of-way application through that system because it is segment-based. And so that's the problem with Acela, it's parcel-based. And so if you're doing work in the right-of-way, you're having to say, I'm picking the city-county building because I'm doing work on Market Street. That doesn't make sense. We should be using a segment-based tool to say, I'm doing work on Market Street from this side to this side, and people can actually see where that work is occurring. That feeds into that public closure viewer, which makes that data just more seamless and transparent for everybody. Because we have built so many hooks into our Acela system with that dot maps tool, we are building a public case search tool. So right now you go to the you go to the Acela Citizens Access Portal to search for enforcement cases, for permit statuses, things like that. We're going to build that into that .maps tool, so it's a little bit easier to search, a little bit more intuitive and visually friendly to search for those kinds of updates. But yes, it can be a clunky tool to use, and we are very, very aware of that.
I have a general question. So what is the process to become a vendor for DBNS? How do you become a partner with them?
So we follow city county procurement processes. So when we have needs for a vendor, we're putting out an RFP or an a request for qualifications or a request for proposals, defining the work that we're looking for. Anyone is, invited to respond to those proposals. You do have to be a registered vendor with the city of Indianapolis. You can find more information about all of that on the city's purchasing website as far as how to register with the city. But yeah, we're always looking for new vendors whenever we're putting out those procurement processes.
That was kind of the follow-up question is there opportunities for third-party vendors to help with, drainage review, plan review, accelerated review, all of that?
Yeah, so that is what I was mentioning earlier with the timeline and the third-party review assessment. So Alena and our administration and finance team are currently working on that new RFQual packet now for both inspection services and plan review services. That should be out. What's the target date for that, Alena? I know Q1, but I wasn't.
Yeah, in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So we will share that on our socials. Also, you can go to, I think it's called Find Bid Opportunities on indy.gov, and you can see all bid opportunities for all departments. But that will certainly be listed there. You can find more information.
How do single-family homes fit into accelerated review?
Yeah, so currently we focus on the projects that are larger and require more coordination. When we're looking at the accelerated review, we do have an eligibility provision that essentially says these are the kinds of projects that are eligible for accelerated review, and single family residences, unless they're part of a large subdivision, would not be eligible for accelerated review at this time. That's something, if you have feedback on it, you're welcome to share with us, because again, we will be evaluating the accelerated process in this year during the summer.
Anybody else? What does a large subdivision look like?
We might need to have a conversation about this more specifically offline. So if you want to share your contact information, I'd be happy to follow up with you. This is when I'm talking about a subdivision, generally I'm talking about something that would trigger a construction stormwater general permit. And we can discuss further from there. So I look forward to connecting with you.
Multiple acres.
Yes.
Multiple parcels.
Yes.
Anybody have any other questions? I think we got everything.
I do want to just share a quick reminder that when you log off, there will be a survey that pops up asking just for general feedback, things like that. These are designed to be a touch point for the community. And so we want to make sure that we are answering the questions and providing the information that you guys are looking for. So obviously Streamline Indy initiative just kicked off. It's kind of our big focus with permitting right now. So it's the big topic we wanted to talk about. As Dawn mentioned, these are going to be quarterly. So I think the next one is May timeframe. So I can imagine we're going to have some updates on this initiative as well as anything else we're kicking off. August, I think, is the general time frame for the third one, which will be around our budget cycle. So probably talking about any of those big initiatives that we're going to be taking to the city, county, council, or we're kicking off for next year. And then I think November is the target for the last quarter. So we'll probably be focusing on kind of end of year wrap up, where we landed with this initiative, what we're planning for 2026. But feel free to respond in that survey, or you can reach out to Dawn as well as far as like feedback for future webinars, things you guys want to learn about. or any just specific questions. If you want to dig into some of the pieces about the Streamline Indy initiative that we talked about today, we're obviously happy to go in more detail with anybody who needs it.
Absolutely. So we've got everything wrapped up. So thank you, Director Brands. Thank you, Alena, for everything. So again, we want to thank you all for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us in the future. So again, reach out. We're here for you. So thank you, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.